Her heart ached for the mystery within, the intimate nature of a crowded wood. She moved forward, draped in shadows. Dark eyes, racing pulse. She just doesn't know when to stop, does she? Slipping between your fingers, pulling you in, spitting you out. Now, she's unreachable. Lost to the visions you never believed she saw. Chasing the lights in the forest. All sound drowned out beneath the voices in her head, calling her forward. I know what I saw, she repeats. They came to me. As she reaches the thickest of the brush, she knew there was no going back. Closed in, surrounded, the trees entrapping her. And that's when she found the lights once more. Lights, growing in her vision, dripping from the branches, falling from the stars, sprouting from the earth. They attached to her skin, creating connections, drawing strings from her to the skies, her to the ground. Suddenly, the girl was the night, and you'll see her everywhere you look. This is Mirrors, a collection of horrors, history, and hauntings. I'm your host, Gabby. I'm bringing you along with me on a road trip to New England's most haunted locations, leading up to an investigation at the infamous Lizzie Borden house. Today's stop is an interesting one, because not only is it known to be incredibly haunted, but it's also a hub of reported supernatural activity, with common cryptid and UFO sightings. I tend to be more skeptical when it comes to these things, but if I've learned anything in my paranormal journey, you never know what might happen. And I thought this would be a fun opportunity to delve into some uncharted territory. So, join me in embracing our mysticism as I welcome you to the Freetown-Fall River State Forest. This forest is known as one of the most haunted in the world, topping lists alongside the Hoya Baciu in Transylvania and the Pine Barrens, the supposed home of the New Jersey Devil. Freetown-Fall River is also one of the most notable locations in the Bridgewater Triangle, a 200 square mile area in southeastern Massachusetts. Like the Bermuda Triangle, the Bridgewater Triangle is an area of land with a concentration of paranormal and supernatural activity, ranging from ghostly encounters to Bigfoot sightings. The term was first coined by author and cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman, who described the land as a window area of unexplained occurrences, a portal to the other side, if you will. For all my Massachusetts listeners, or anyone familiar with the area, Rehoboth marks the southwest point, Abington the north, and Freetown in the southeast. If any of you live within the triangle, I'd love to know. Aside from the forest, the most famous location included in the triangle is, of course, the Lizzie Borden house, the site of gruesome, unsolved murders. Because that's another thing about the Bridgewater Triangle. It seems to draw in darkness, perpetuating and complicating its own energy. Freetown-Fall River State Forest alone has been the site of numerous murders, crimes, and dark rituals. That being said, I didn't venture too far into these woods, especially considering I was alone, but I like to think this helped keep the mystery alive. I stood along the forest's edge, feeling its allure. I looked down a trail coated in fallen leaves, fascinated by these woods. I don't know what it was. It was just a really cool place to be and observe. I don't think I've ever been to a place offering such a wide variety of claims. To my disappointment, I did not find Bigfoot, but let's start by talking about those who did. The most recent documented sighting takes us back to 2009, when a couple spotted a large, bipedal creature crouched down along the side of the highway, just beyond the forest. As they passed, it stood up, revealing its immense size. The couple described the creature as human-like, but also not. They ended up calling 911, which brought state troopers to the area, only to find no trace of this elusive creature. No footsteps, nothing. One of the most reputable reports comes from the 70s, when a group of police officers saw what they called a man-beast, leading them to search the area high and low, looking for answers about what they saw, only to, once again, find nothing. Obviously, Bigfoot or Sasquatch is the most popular cryptid worldwide, inspiring many different iterations of what the creature looks like and is capable of. Some believe them to be nature spirits, existing somewhere between the spirit realm and what we understand as reality. Allegedly, this would give them the ability to disappear on a whim, moving between these spaces on their own accord, and helping them go largely unseen and undiscovered by humans for all these years, and only leave behind a few different unnaturally large footprints. Researchers that have developed this idea also draw a connection to UFO activity. They say, perhaps, Bigfoot creatures can also manifest through the unexplained lights moving throughout the forest, or they may even offer an earth-bound vessel for extraterrestrial beings. Is there truth to any of this? I don't know. I just think of that episode of Modern Family when Phil and his dad prank everyone with the large footprints. If you know, you know. But it's definitely interesting to consider. And these strange orbs of light and unexplained flying objects are weirdly common in Freetown-Fall River. In 1974, while he was the governor of California, Ronald Reagan even saw strange lights in the sky while flying above the forest, which tailed their plane, an obviously high-security military aircraft. The lights moved in erratic patterns before disappearing entirely, leaving Reagan, his security personnel, and Air Force pilot Bill Painter stunned. Another cryptid frequently associated with the state park is the Pukwudgie, a humanoid creature standing 4 to 5 feet tall. They allegedly have gray skin and a human head, with dramatically large noses, ears, and fingers. First associated with the Wampanoag tribe, indigenous stories tell tales of men who chose a life of solitude in the forest, noting this as the origin of the Pukwudgie. Pukwudgie actually directly translates to person of the wilderness, and they appear across many indigenous tribes. Algonquin folklore says these creatures are tricksters who never have malicious intent, although they can be provoked if they or their forests are disrespected. They're said to lure people off trails, throw rocks at them, and just create chaos. But, and this is quite the escalation, Pukwudgies are known to carry a bow and arrow and are said to have been responsible for kidnapping and sabotaging people, drawing them into dangerous, potentially life-threatening situations. Pukwudgies also have the ability to conjure flames at will, creating small, magical fires. The indigenous history of this land is often referred to as the core of its spiritual energy. The King Philip's War took place across New England from 1675 to 1676. 14 months of brutality and devastation, fought between indigenous people and encroaching English settlers. This was the bloodiest conflict per capita in early American history, with both sides suffering immense losses. Entire indigenous tribes were decimated, with the Wampanoag tribe being the most directly impacted. Up to 80% of their population was lost, with survivors being displaced, forced to assimilate into the colonies, or even sold off into slavery and sent to the West Indies. Their leader, Metacom, who is also known as King Philip, hence the name of the war, was killed. His head being grotesquely displayed in Plymouth for over 20 years, an act symbolizing the dehumanization indigenous people were facing. The Wampanoag tribe was based in southern Massachusetts and Rhode Island, with Freetown-Fall River being part of their ancestral lands, viewed with the utmost respect and honor. Historians believe this area was used for ceremonies, gatherings, burials, and other spiritual practices. Profile Rock, which is a popular landmark within the forest, was considered sacred, the rock itself appearing to resemble the face of Massasoit, King Philip's father. The Wampanoag people are at the heart of the forest's folklore, not just to acknowledge the true history of this land, but the rich oral storytelling of indigenous tribes. Stories embracing the legacy of their ancestors, believing in a spiritual, unexplainable connection to nature. It's said that during the King Philip's War, Freetown-Fall River State Forest would have been a critical point in the Wampanoag defensive efforts, with the dense foliage providing cover, and likely leading to bloody, close-range combat. So, to think of this war in itself being a last-ditch effort to maintain freedom from colonization, with this specific place being a representation of that resistance, it is likely stained by the energy of such a tragedy. I believe strongly in the power of residual energy, the lingering violence and trauma of events replayed throughout time. To me, that is especially true in places rooted in the natural elements: rocks, trees, soil, stories of the past, etched into the geology. The deep spiritual connection once held to this land has made it a place of reverence for the Wampanoag people, and perhaps has created a space to explore the complexities of the spirit realm. It's here, in the shadows of towering trees, the tales of the mystical, cryptids, spirits, unexplained phenomena begin to take shape. And that leads us to the reason you're all here: the paranormal encounters. Hikers have reported shadowy figures moving between the trees or standing ominously in the distance. Sinister laughter with no known source, and disembodied voices have been heard in the woods as well. And those orbs of light spotted amongst the trees. While some believe them to be UFO activity, others perceive them as spiritual manifestations. Many of these reports come from Profile Rock, mentioned earlier in the episode, which stood for hundreds of years. Although I've heard it has recently crumbled, and I'm not sure if that's like partially crumbled or entirely, but yeah, I don't think it is how it used to be, unfortunately. There is one spot where this energy seems to be concentrated: an 80-foot deep rock quarry known as the Sonnet Ledge, or simply the Ledge. Many people passing by have seen apparitions standing on the edge, preparing to jump, or even stepping over and falling to the water below, only to disappear into thin air. This is potentially residual energy, because this spot has unfortunately been the site of many suicides. Accidental deaths and injuries have occurred as well when people fell from the ledge. Even just driving by, many feel an overwhelming sense of dread as they approach the quarry. Those who have stopped to actually explore recall being overtaken by the urge to jump over the edge. Maybe it's intrusive thoughts, maybe it's a dark energy. Perhaps even dark energies conjured by the rituals done in this area, because it's also rumored to be a hotspot of cult activities. That being said, there's the real-life horrors of this forest, because humans will always be scarier than ghosts in my mind. Copacut Road, an unassuming stretch of pavement within the forest, is where the body of 15-year-old Mary Lou Arruda was discovered after her disappearance in 1978. She'd been tied to a tree, left to die. Her body was there for 2 whole months before she was discovered. She was a sophomore at Bridgewater-Raynham Regional High School, last seen by classmates riding her bike. An autopsy showed that she'd been strangled. The scene itself appeared ritualistic, with Mary Lou's belongings arranged in a circle in front of her body. 31-year-old James A. Cater, who worked in a donut shop in Brockton, Massachusetts, was the primary suspect, his lime green car being traced to the murder scene, as well as Mary Lou's neighborhood. He'd also been in jail before for a similar crime, although that 13-year-old victim was fortunately able to survive the strangulation, untie herself, and escape Cater. More physical evidence was obtained, and Cater's alibi pretty much fell apart, leading him to be convicted of Mary Lou's kidnapping and murder in 1979. The verdict kept getting overturned, and Cater was tried 4 times before being officially convicted and sentenced to life in prison. To think of Mary Lou's family having to relive that trial 4 separate times is infuriating. While investigating another murder in the area just 2 years later, police were approached by a group of locals concerned about satanic cults in Freetown-Fall River. Now, before we get into it, I will say this was during the satanic panic in the 80s. A widespread suspicion leading to accusations and over 12,000 unsubstantiated cases of satanic ritual abuse. So, this clearly could have contributed to the fear amongst locals. But there was evidence of animal sacrifices found by law enforcement in the woods, including splatterings of animal blood and cow carcasses arranged in strange patterns. The murder being investigated was then believed to be connected to a series of other murders called the Fall River Cult Killings, which occurred within the same period. 3 further documented murders took place here. An unhoused man was killed in 1987 after being somehow mistaken for an undercover cop, and in 2001, 2 men were found shot to death on Bell Rock Road. There have been numerous other assaults and crimes reported from here as well. OnlyInYourState.com also discusses other strange occurrences in the area, including a group of aggressive stray dogs that were loose in the forest in 2006, an escaped emu chasing visitors, and a series of wires found stretched across biking paths in 2016, seemingly intended to catch bikers around the neck and decapitate them. There is so much to the Freetown-Fall River State Forest, a lot that I didn't even touch on. Since this season is kind of a case study in communicating with spirit, I believe this forest taught me how to be open to how spirit manifests, because it could happen in completely unexpected and unimaginable ways. And like I said, I'm very skeptical about the whole Bigfoot UFO thing, but it was a good challenge for me to look into those reports, as well as to delve into true crime a little. There's a lot of variety here, so hopefully you enjoyed the episode. This place is just bizarre, which leaves us asking, is this a series of unfortunate events? Strange coincidences? Or is there something to this land? Truth to the seemingly impossible claims of the Bridgewater Triangle. I'll leave you with one final question today. Would you go to the Freetown-Fall River State Forest? Thank you for listening. I'll be back next week with a brand new episode. Until then, stay spooky. This has been Mirrors, Horrors, History, and Hauntings. Produced and hosted by Gabby Hope Fry.